Coming up on Transformers University, the Mechanic, Scraplets, Throttlebots, and the Car Wash of Doom. It's time to talk some Marvel Comics right now on Transformers University. Hello, my friend, and welcome to episode 93 of Transformers University. I am your host, Anthony Brucali, owner-operator, Madman, behind TFU.INFO, the website, this podcast, TFU News and Views podcast, the social media, and oh so much more. And today we're going to talk about the beginning of the 1987 run of the Marvel US Comics. And we're going to start with issues 28, 29, 30, and 31. Now, it's an interesting time for Transformers comics in 1987. There's going to be some big changes at Marvel, which we'll cover soon enough. But the environment leading into those changes is definitely reflected in some of the storytelling here and just some of the, I would say, some of the passivity to Bob Budiansky's storytelling in the next couple of issues. It's not to say they're all bad. There's actually, at least in this batch of four, there is certainly one very controversial issue. There is certainly one very good issue, in my estimation. And then there's two other issues, one of which introduces a concept that will get reused many times over for years to come. So just what am I getting at with all of these vague references? Well, you'll find out right after this. Hey, want to help out this podcast or the website TFU.INFO? There's a number of ways you can do it. Let me tell you how. You can help us directly by joining our Patreon and enrolling as a student at Transformers University. There, you'll get early access to the podcast as well as exclusive behind-the-scenes peeks and perks for as little as $1 a month. Sign up is quick and easy. Just swing on by to www.patreon.com/TFUInfo. Another way you can help us is by using our Amazon link, www.tfu.info/Amazon. Type that into your browser whenever you want to shop at Amazon, and a portion of what you spend will be contributed back to us. It's that easy. Finally, you don't become the world's longest running transforming toy archive without some help from other fans. We're always on the hunt for photos of figures and accessories we're missing from our pages. If you'd like to contribute, go to tfu.info/help for a list of what we need, or send an email to info@tfu.info. tfu.info, the Alpha Trion and Omega Prime of transforming toys. Now, back to the show. And we're going to kick things off with issue number 28. The story is entitled Mechanical Difficulties. It features Blaster and Goldbug on the cover with the headline, "The Mechanic Strikes Again," and the Autobots strike out, with the Mechanic, our featured villain, swinging a tree at Blaster and Goldbug. Story written by Bob Budiansky, pencils by Don Perlin, inks by Ian Aiken and Brian Garvey, letters by Janice Chang, colors by Nel Yomtov, and edits by Don Daly. Now, the U.S. cover for this book, drawn by Ian Aiken, it's actually a pretty nice cover with some really good detail on Blaster and Goldbug. The UK version of these covers is interesting in that they did not port over a US cover for either part of the UK version. So both covers, issues 121 and 122 in the UK, both covers by Jeff Anderson.
Man goes into cage, cage goes into salsa. Sharks into salsa.
121 features Blaster and Goldbug being told to surrender by the Mechanic, while the cover for 122 features Goldbug in his vehicle mode being attacked by mechanical arms. And this is the first issue of the US G1 comic to cost $1. Prior to that, this book was a 75-cent book. Now, it starts out with the Mechanic stealing a radar dish from Portland International Airport. The Mechanic still has Ratchet's tools from the last time we saw him, and he still has his sidekick Juan. The Mechanic fights off the security at the airport and leaves, and downtown, Goldbug and Blaster are on a stakeout of the Mechanic's hideout. Two thugs, who we find out are named Deadhead and Fuzzy, try to steal Blaster from Goldbug. Goldbug slams the door and drives away, scares the thugs, who then meet two detectives. Goldbug and Blaster head back to base, and there's a missing word bubble in this scene. I guess Grimlock is trying on crowns, and he asks Goldbug what he thinks of those crowns, and the question is missing. So he just walks into Goldbug answering Grimlock without a word bubble. This was later fixed in the UK version. Grimlock is then told about the mechanic situation. He is not happy about Goldbug and Blaster returning without the mechanic. Cut over to the police station where the cops give us some exposition. We find out that the mechanic's real name is Nestor Forbes. I don't remember if we got that before. And they set a trap for him, leaking word of an advanced computer on a truck. Back over at the mechanic's lair, he's in an abandoned canning factory. He's squatting in an abandoned canning factory. Now, here's the thing. Who has a factory that makes, tin cans, which are still fairly useful in the mid-'80s and fairly useful today, and just, leaves it to collect dust? And how is he squatting there? The mechanic has his own criminal customer base, and one customer is dissatisfied, and the mechanic tosses him out using the power booster rod that he had stolen from Ratchet. Now, back at the Autobot base, this sets off an alarm for Wheeljack, who can trace the signal of the power booster rod. Grimlock then sends Blaster and Goldbug to retrieve it, and Blaster and Goldbug stake out a road near the canning factory as a truck approaches. And fortunately for them, they were there because a tree falls, and really, someone had to be there to hear it, and the mechanic and Juan raid the truck. The truck contains a very powerful computer, 256 kilobytes, yes, kilobytes, that is 0.000256 gigs. If you're keeping tracks, the 256 kilobyte 4max computer looks just like a jukebox and is the most powerful computer on the market today in 1987. Goldbug and Blaster engage the mechanic as the police arrive. The police decide to fire on the Autobots, thinking they're working with the mechanic, and the mechanic and Juan use the distraction to escape. In the process of the escape, the mechanic uses a tree to knock over Blaster and Goldbug, just like on the cover. Goldbug and Blaster give chase. The detectives shoot out Goldbug's tire, and the police try to follow them but slip on ice. Juan had used the cryogenic sprayer to slick the road. Blaster changes Goldbug's tire, and they continue on their way. At the canning factory, the mechanic is holding a meeting with all of the local criminals, and Goldbug and Blaster arrive. Goldbug spies while Blaster waits on the road. The mechanic is selling weaponized cars. Does this sound familiar? Because this was, I think, City of Steel, or one of the other ones from the cartoon, weaponized cars. The police are arriving in choppers because the computer was bugged. And Blaster transforms to warn the cops. He lays down his weapons to gain their trust, and Goldbug sneaks in the back of the canning factory and gets captured. Blaster and the police, particularly the one detective who we've been seeing throughout, Detective Greco.
Booker, Sunday night on Fox.
They make a deal to get in, and Detective Greco walks into the party, rocking Blaster. The mobsters in the meeting draw their guns, but Blaster transforms and electro scrambles all the mechanics' cars, having them shoot, everywhere. The police raid. The mechanic escapes. Goldbug, about to be dismantled by Juan, until Detective Greco arrives, pulls his gun on Juan and makes him stop. And those dismantling features is the mechanical arms on the UK cover. The mobsters are arrested. Goldbug and Blaster plan to continue their search. They also don't want to go back to the Ark because Grimlock is going to be mad at them, and neither of them believe in Grimlock's leadership. And so they drive off in the opposite direction of the Ark. This actually sets up a long-term story of Grimlock versus Blaster
and Grimlock's leadership. And that's pretty cool, actually. It becomes a good story as we continue on through Budiansky's run. It's a little bit flimsy here at the start, but it does get better. Of note here, there are no Decepticons in this issue. There are only 5 Autobots total: Grimlock, Blaster, Goldbug, Wheeljack, and a flashback of Ratchet. And so, like I said, this story kind of sits middle of the road. It's not particularly bad. It's not particularly good. It does set up a few things as we go along, and that'll take us over to issue 29. Entitled Cratered Critters on the inside. On the outside, the cover features Blaster's head as his body is engulfed by Scraplets. In fact, the title on the cover says Scrapped by the Scraplets, and in a little bubble at the bottom, introducing the Triple Changers. Now, this story appeared in Marvel UK issues 123 and 124. Same creative team as the previous issue, but the cover on the US side here, drawn by Bob Budiansky. And I don't think we've talked about Bob Budiansky as an artist, with inks by Aiken and Garvey on this one. Budiansky had a very successful run on the first volume of Ghost Rider. He also drew a handful of covers for the Transformers series, and it turns out he used to sketch the covers to help him develop story ideas. And the neat thing about this cover is that the Scraplets all have like these individual looks and faces to them. They're cartoony, but they're weird-looking little robot guys, and for a thing that is going to be essentially a mob, it's neat to see them have like individual facial personalities on the cover. It's also the last time for a while we are going to see Optimus Prime in the box in the top left corner of this issue. Marvel actually swapped that out for a different character starting in issue 30. Now, this issue starts with a robot crashing to Earth, and we find that he is falling apart. Blaster and Goldbug, they're stalking our old friend GB Blackrock, and they make him ditch his date to talk to them. They decide to drive over to a Blackrock gas station, and GB Blackrock happens to have a master key for the pumps and uses it to refuel Goldbug. Now, Blaster and Goldbug tell Blackrock that they have left the Autobots. Blaster recounts the story of Scrounge and gets all touchy about it. Goldbug makes a comment, and Blaster really does get upset, thinks Goldbug just wants a reason to go back to the Ark. And they begin to pump Blackrock for some information. He mentions a meteor crashing in Arizona, and the meteor is sending radio signals. Goldbug and Blaster go to investigate. Back on Cybertron, Ratbat, the Decepticons' fuel accountant, enlists the Triple Changers to find a package on Earth. Apparently, Ratbat sent this UPS ground because the pilot is missing in action, but the ship is still sending radio signals, just like our meteor. The Triple Changers also need to enlist a rich human with automotive ties while they're there. Now, note here, just like on the cover, this is the first appearance of the Triple Changers in the U.S. fiction. They do appear in some of the other stories that we've covered in the Marvel UK. At the crash site on Earth in Arizona, scientists are investigating and are driven off when the space bridge and the Triple Changers appear. The Triple Changers find the ship's pilot, and something crawls up Blitzwing's leg. Goldbug and Blaster enlist one of these researchers that were there, a guy by the name of Charles Fong, to help them sneak past the military guarding the crater. They get past, and then they get attacked by the Triple Changers. As Blaster fights off the Triple Changers, Goldbug saves Fong as he falls into the crater. They end up meeting the pilot of the ship, and they find out about Scraplets. Scraplets are tiny robots who take the shape of screws, nuts, bolts, etc., and they are infecting the Triple Changers, the pilot, and now Blaster. We find out that only a rare chemical can cure them. Fong convinces Goldbug to go for help. Blaster, thinking Goldbug has abandoned him in the fight, is upset and annoyed, but Blaster fights on. Goldbug ends up getting infected by the Scraplets and starts to feel guilty at the same time. About 2.5 hours pass as Goldbug, in vehicle mode, is driving away from the crater, and he can no longer continue, And this story will be continued in the next issue. Now, the Scraplets as a concept are important. They do show up in later iterations of the Transformers. The Triple Changers making their debut is kind of cool. Again, there's not a lot in this issue in terms of great storytelling, but it does set up the next issue, which is really good, and we'll set up the final issue we're talking about as well. So let's not hold off here. Let's dive right in to issue 30, entitled The Cure on the inside. And on the outside, the only bubble we get is that it says, introducing the Throttlebots. And the cover features a weird monster-shaped figure being punched through by Rollbar, with the other 5 Throttlebots on the cover in watching on as the fight continues. And the monster is holding up a BlackRock tanker. Optimus Prime, as I mentioned earlier, no longer in the corner box. It is now Grimlock in Dino mode, hanging out in the corner box where it says Marvel and the price of $1. This issue for me is actually one of my all-time favorites. It's a simple story. It's a very well-told and well-executed story. The art is good, and I just remember, I had even when I was a comic collector as a teenager, early teens, and Transformers was kind of like that guilty pleasure comic that, I still read and still subscribed to, actually, but didn't necessarily, wear it on my sleeve. I did have one section of my wall that had just Transformer books, and, you had about, I think I dedicated 10 of those wall hanging sleeves to Transformers, and this was one that was definitely in there. This issue 21, Aerial Bots Over America, issue 19, and I don't know, the later issues were still coming out, so it was ones with cool covers usually ended up there, but I digress. This one was always one of my favorites, and so that's why I would make it onto the wall. Now, this features the same creative team as the previous issue. The cover that I was talking about, drawn by Herb Trimpe. This appeared in Marvel UK issues 126 through 127. The UK covers for this, issue 126, features a Rollbar and Wideload attacking Goldbug in the shadow of Ratbat. And they're attacking Goldbug with what seems to be a 2x4. And this one, drawn by Lee Sullivan. Issue 127 features the monster from the US issue saying food, and over a pile of defeated Throttlebots, and that one drawn by Robin Smith. Now, the story opens on Cybertron, and the Throttlebots are leading a raid on a Decepticon fuel storage facility. They encounter a, quote, Titanium-class destruction drone, which looks like a giant version of Cosmos for the most part. The Throttlebots surrender and are brought to Ratbat. Astrotrain reports into Ratbat. The Scraplets situation is worsening. They have the ship plus Blaster as prisoner, but they are all infected with Scraplets. Astrotrain demands a cure, or he will not plant the device on the human subject that they mentioned last issue, and he will only do that once they're cured. Instead of sending Decepticons, Ratbat has planned to send the Throttlebots to Earth to kill the infected. They have 10 hours, or Ratbat is destroying the entire planet. Elsewhere, Goldbug is being pushed by Charles Fong. He finds a BlackRock station, and the attendant gives Fong some water, which drips onto Goldbug and kills the Scraplets. Yes, that's the rare chemical water. Seeing the water drip on Goldbug, Fong demands the attendants give him water to wash his car, but they will not let him. Cut back to the crater site, and we are told it is 90 minutes earlier, and the Throttlebots are arriving. They're there with acid canisters set to melt everyone inside of the crater. So they start planting these acid canisters around the crater, and the Scraplets see the Throttlebots. Searchlight spots some tire tracks coming out of the crater, and they realize there's at least one more infected. So Rollbar and Wideload go and follow the lead. 93 minutes later, Wideload and Rollbar arrive at the gas station. Attendants at the gas station still trying to stop Charles Fong from washing Goldbug. So 93 minutes later, Wideload and Rollbar arrive at that gas station, and the attendants still trying to stop Charles Fong from washing Goldbug. For 93 minutes. Okay, so, at some point in that 93 minutes, does someone go, you know what, all right, bud, here's the hose, go wash your car. Like, an hour and a half arguing with the dude to not let him wash his car. I want to see a comic of that 93 minutes. I really do. So, Rollbar and Wideload set up to, basically, slag Goldbug. They're going to melt him with acid. Goldbug tries to flee, and Rollbar hits him with a wooden beam, like on the UK cover. Fong, he intervenes by throwing some Scraplets on Wideload, and then dumps water on him. He throws him onto his forearm, and then hits him with a bucket of water. When they realize that the water is what kills the Scraplets, Fong finally gets his chance to wash Goldbug. Rollbar and Wideload, they catch up to Goldbug, and Goldbug heads for a phone and realizes he needs to call GB Blackrock. They get GB Blackrock's assistant on the line, who then gets GB for them, says it's a Mr. Goldberg before correcting himself, and puts him through to GB Blackrock. Goldbug requests water and fast. Then everyone arrives at the crater, and Blackrock tankers arrive, 2 of them, actually. And Goldbug calls down to Blaster to tell him his plan. Blaster hears the plan out and says, no, release the acid instead of curing the Scraplets. He would rather kill off the 3 Triple Changers than survive what's going on. Goldbug needs to choose, and Goldbug chooses acid. Just then, the Scraplets decide to merge into Scraplet Monster, which is what we saw on the cover, and he grabs one of the water tankers and throws it. The Throttlebots begin to fight the monster, but they don't have weapons because they were captured and imprisoned. The only thing they have is the acid, and so they're starting to get infected by the Scraplets as well. Goldbug grabs a hose and cures Blaster and the Triple Changers. The Triple Changers then go and fight the Scraplet monster. Blitzwing actually cuts off its leg, and Goldbug hoses down the Throttlebots. Blaster grabs the remaining tanker and smashes it into the Scraplet monster, killing all the Scraplets. In the melee, Astrotrain stops GB Blackrock, who had arrived with the tankers, and injects the device that was supposed to go on a rich human with automotive industry ties onto his head. The Triple Changers then grab the ship's cargo and fly away. Goldbug and Blaster make up, and everyone lives happily ever after. Okay, I'm kind of summing it up a little quickly there, but overall, this is such a solid story throughout. I love seeing the Throttlebots kind of get a little bit of personality throughout this issue. Everything in this story has a reason, either in this story or setting up something for the next issue. It kind of brings a culmination to some of the little pieces we saw in the previous 2 issues. It's just a good story all around. As far as the 4 we cover today, it's certainly my favorite among them. And so that brings us to the final issue that we are going to talk about today, and that is Marvel US number 31, interior titled Buster Wiki and the Car Wash of Doom. And it's neat to kind of talk about the title in here is that the font is very Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom styled inside. On the outside, it just says, it's wet, it's wild, it's the Car Wash of Doom. It features Ratbat on the cover fighting Buster Witwicky, who's wielding a crowbar, and his girlfriend Jessie, who looks nothing like she does inside the book, on the outside. And this cover, once again, drawn by Bob Budiansky. In the UK, this story was featured with 2 different covers again. And for those covers, UK issue 128, with art by David Hine and John Burns. You're fired! Features Shockwave leading an attack on a ship, and UK 129, drawn by Robin Smith on the cover, features Ratbat attacking Buster Witwicky inside his car, but not at the car wash. Now, team on this one a little different than what we've had in the past 3 issues. Written by Bob Budiansky, pencils by Don Perlin, inks by Jim Fern, who we'll talk about in just a moment, letters by Rick Parker, who we haven't seen in a Transformers book since issue 9, colors once again by Nel Yomtov, and edits by Don Daly. Jim Fern It's his first work on Transformers. He was a longtime artist for Marvel and DC. He credits himself, I haven't seen it anywhere else, but in his own bio for conventions, in co-designing Jubilee for the X-Men. He also co-created the series Crossing Midnight for Vertigo. Now, for more on a story that involves a ship and a car wash of doom, I'm going to toss it over to my good friend, Gabriel Owens, the Salty Seaman.
Hey folks, Gabriel Owens, the Salty Seaman here, reviewing issue 31 of the G1 Transformers US run, Buster with Wiki and the Car Wash of Doom. Now this is a very, very infamous.
What does that mean? Infamous.
Oh, Dusty. Infamous is when you're more than famous.
Issue amongst hardcore Transformer fans, going back to as early as I can remember. You know, usually when discussing some of the, usually considered some of the worst of the what the Transformers series has to offer. If you know, in the comics, there's two issues usually get pointed to, both written by Mr. Bob Budiansky. This one, The Car Wash of Doom, and Micromaster Wrestling, which we are about 20-something issues from here. But yeah, I have not read this in a very long time. I know the last time I did might have been, I bought a physical copy. I was hanging out with a fellow trans fan, James Hooks, and we picked it up at a comic shop and read it. And that would have been, oh my God, 20 years ago. No, I've reread it since. Okay, I read it when I definitely read it when I got the trade paperbacks. So anyway, but yeah, it's regardless, it's been a very, very long time. Why was this so bad? I'm going to take a little look here and let you guys know. I should also mention, of the batch of comics being reviewed for this issue, or this episode, this is the only one I had as a kid. You know, a great choice. I looked at all the ones, there were, you know, a couple of good ones actually, and I was like, this is the one I owned, which is just kind of how it happens. And this was definitely around the era where the comics were losing me. You know, I think, you know, I was very haphazardly picking them up, you know, kind of post the whole Blaster and Grimlock fight for power. It just, I was just losing interest, you know, and issues like this obviously did not help because, like I said, I have not many from the issues before it I was missing, and quite a few issues after this one I was missing it. So obviously, you know, I was feeling the same thing a lot of people were. You know, I think there's a lot of, you know, belief. You know, Bob was really basically was burnt out, you know, around the Blaster, Grimlock, Optimus dying arc. Kind of the last we really saw of him, you know, delivering stories that people really loved. You know, at least what I see in hindsight. So. Yeah, and this is always pointed at too as a, you know, an example of just how bad he had gotten. And remember, he would still go on for another 20-something issues after this too. And there's nothing better for the Salty Seaman to start off a review by noticing some military movie bullshit. Or military media BS, I should say, in this case. We start off on an oil tanker. The Decepticons are attacking it. We see the Coneheads and Vortex and the Insecticons. So we're getting all those second and third wave guys and toys. In terms of, you know, this is a civilian oil tanker. This is Black Rock's, so it's not, you know, it's not a military, but their uniforms are not what any civilian roughnecks I've ever seen. It looks like someone got some weird reference material of people at sea and just kind of combined traditional, you know, U.S. Navy look with, let's make sure also we don't put them in a full uniform, and then they just kind of like half-assed U.S. Navy dungarees. And you know, I mean, this is the '80s, but I don't remember ever seeing any pictures of that for civilians. So it's kind of fun. But yes, the Decepticons are attacking for resources, as you know, they typically do. And Shockwave and flies down to the oil tanker along with Ratbat, who I believe has already been introduced before this, but I believe this is also the first issue we really get to see Ratbat. And it's so interesting because Ratbat has a toy spec which is being played up in here, which Bob wrote. So obviously that part of the character he obviously really likes, and he made him a fuel auditor, essentially an IRS number cruncher type, but instead he's talking about he's about fuel conservation, efficiency, and he's talking to Mr. Logic, Shockwave. So that's a lot of great back and forth. And Shockwave is weirdly kind of no-towing to this guy, even though he is, I would assume, there's no Megatron, no Straxes. He's probably the de facto leader of the Decepticons as we know them. But I guess everybody has to answer to the accountant one way or the other. And Ratbat goes to check the fuel for quality and finds out it's empty, because the Decepticons are incredible idiots who apparently attacked this oil tanker after it, I guess, unloaded its cargo. But it's just right away we're seeing, Ratbat, if you knew him from the cartoon, obviously had no real personality. He was another one of Soundwave's tapes. He was a scout and spy, but was nonverbal. They definitely did nothing with his background as a fuel auditor. So that's all Budansky, and as we'll see as the comics go on with Ratbat, he really loves this character, and was, if nothing else, he was having fun with that. I don't know, maybe he just got audited recently or what. But and a lot of people were just like, what in the hell? You got Ratbat in charge of the Decepticons. Oh my lord. It was, yeah. So we get a little catch up here now, moving on to the Portland area. We see, for the first time in quite a while, Buster with Wiki and his dad Sparkplug, and Buster's girlfriend Jessie. A little bit of seemingly normal life. They have opened up a car wash, which is doing well. However, there's a gas shortage going on, and given what Ratbat told us on the last page, we can assume the two things are connected. And also, Sparkplug is acting a little strange, and apparently just keeps filling up his gas over and over again. Also, will be a plot point. This is, just also FYI, this is obvious. This whole issue is a bit of an homage to kind of old horror movies, Pod People, and similar things to that nature. Reading it in that context, it's I think more fun than just like, oh my god, this is so stupid and horrible. But yes, we also get a kind of a recap of what Buster did with the Autobots, between issues 1 and 12, and the Sparkplug had a heart attack, and all the stuff that went on, and they're just trying to put their lives back together and live normally. So we cut to another old friend, Mr. GB Blackrock, who we find out is the one who owns this new franchise of car washes, the Wash and Roll, which I'm guessing Sparkplug is a franchise owner of. But a nice synergy here between our human allies in the Decepticon, or in the Autobot field here, and he is really pushing this car wash idea, and eventually his board of directors agree, okay, they are doing well, and then it's revealed he has been mine has been taken over by Mr. Ratbat, who was in his pocket the entire time. And the plot quickly comes to fruition in terms of what's going on. So we go back to Buster and Jessie. As Buster is closing up the car wash, Jessie wants to come hang out with him, and Buster's being in a funky little mood. And Jessie wants her car washed. He's like, yeah, sure, whatever. And we get to see the inside of the car wash, and it's like, playing blasting heavy metal and disco lights, and how we find out Buster is not a heavy metal fan. But, I'll forgive him this time, and, just being kind of a whining brat, and Jessie finally is like, look, and just starts making out with him in the car wash, and just when it seems like the night's going to get really good for Buster, suddenly Jessie says she has to go home, and bye. So Buster is immediately suspicious and decides to follow her, even though, yes, she was acting weird, but he's like, well, that's just too weird for my taste. I'm going to stalk her back to her house. Okay. That doesn't read very well, actually, but he decides to follow Jessie, and sure enough, she's going into a BlackRock owned place of some sort, which makes no sense. So in this case, at least, Buster's paranoia suspicion turns out to be correct. Buster notices everyone here seems to be under some kind of mind control as he, ends up getting shot at by Laserbeak, who he assumes recognizes him and holds a grudge. But no, Ratbat was just mad he was out of line. So he continues on. Earlier he had flashed his headlights at Jesse, which I guess, sudden flashes of light is enough to break Decepticon hypnotization. And they start wondering what's going on and figure out Ratbat's plan and go to investigate. And he also notices his dad in line, so of course now he has to go rescue his dad. So Ratbat and Blackrock reveal the car wash and roll Mark II, I assume here, and Sparkplug, of course, is picked to be the first customer, which I assume, which looks like it permanently brainwashes you into being a slave. And we get a little backstory, which is kind of cool. Like they bring in a car wash from Cybertron, which transforms into a car wash from a hunk of something else or whatever. But I do like that. I thought that was cool. But feeling desperate, Buster feels he has no choice, but he stops, breaks in line, and is trying to rescue his dad. Also realize here, Blackrock and the Wikis have never met. Oddly, Sparkplug and GB do not recognize each other and are, apparently having their first conversation. And Buster is trying to desperately save his father. Buster attempts to flee Ratbat and gets stuck in the car wash. And here we have a bit of a horror scene. It's Buster with nothing but a tire iron versus a relatively small but actually, Ratbat's size kind of jumps back and forth between some panels here. He's awfully big at the crowd meeting, and he's much smaller here in the car wash, but these things happen. And he is, tearing apart his car, trying to get at him, threatens to end his life. Buster sees the strobe lights and, feels his mind almost go. And right before Ratbat is about to finish him off, Jesse hits him with the truck, and they attempt to flee the car wash. If you're a fan of Ratbat, this is probably not, it does not make him look like the greatest of warriors here. He can't handle two humans in a car. It leads to Buster escaping and taking his trusty tire iron and breaking the hypnotic effect that is causing all the trouble, throwing it at the car wash. And Blackrock and Sparkplug and everybody else snap out of it, and Laserbeak and Ratbat decide to get out while the getting's good, and the day is saved, and the Buster did not need to call the Autobots. He handled it by himself, and he gets a kiss from Jesse to end the book. Yeah, it's the definition of a throwaway book. There's a bit of, furthering the plot of, we've introduced, the character of Ratbat, and that's going to change the dynamic of Decepticon leadership going forward here, but reading it as a homage to various kinds of horror movies, the car wash, the whole hypnotizing the pod people kind of vibe. I do kind of appreciate that, and I understand just it's a writer very, very bored with what he's or burnout on what he's been doing on this book for 30 something issues, and trying to have a little fun. But yeah, it's really just not a great story. I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be, but I get what it does. You just compare it to other random issues. I mean, how terrible is it really? It's just, I think there's certain thematic things there that just really rubbed a lot of fans the wrong way. And I'm not seeing it as that terrible. But no, it's definitely not good. But if you're a fan of Ratbat, and this is probably an issue, if you are, this is probably an issue why. So you like it anyway. But everyone else, I can't say it's at least partially deserves its reputation. Maybe not quite as much, but yeah. Anyways, that's all the Salty Seaman has for today. I'll kick it back to you, Ant.
All right, thanks, Gabe. And you can catch Gabe on his YouTube channel, The Salty Seaman, over at youtube.com/recharge138. And to touch on a few things that Gabe passed over that I wanted to mention, not a lot, but, when Jesse's putting the moves on Buster, the reason she gets hypnotized is because she opens her eyes while kissing. Come on, Jesse, that's bad form. Also worth noting, the Decepticons are using humans to bring fuel to them. The pumps at the BlackRock facility aren't filling up the tanks, they're siphoning fuel. One of the things we find out, and one of the quotes in here, it's just ridiculous, is that when they find out that the version 2 of the wash and roll will control people forever, Buster shouts out that it not only washes cars, it washes brains. Oh, what a terrible line. But also, Sparkplug gives his first name in this issue, and it's revealed to be Irving. But it's not the first time we've seen his first name in the comic. In issue 4, his first name was mentioned, but it was William. So Sparkplug goes by Irving or by William. You pick, I guess. And finally, the last little tidbit here. No Autobots really appear in this issue. Blue Streak and Bumblebee appear in one panel in a flashback, but as far as the story goes, not a single Autobot to be found.
Thanks for listening to the show. Stick around to hear what's coming up next episode, but first, I want to fill you in on a few ways you can stay in touch with the show. Want to be on the show? Leave us a voicemail at 702-763-4838. That's 702-POD-4TFU. Or send an email to info@tfu.info. Be sure to catch us on Twitter at TFU_info and on Facebook and Instagram under the username TFU.INFO, all one word. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TFU.INFO, where we post all of our podcasts, plus special video segments, reviews, and live coverage of Transformers-related events such as New York Toy Fair and New York Comic Con. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please visit us at www.tfu.info, the world's longest-running Transforming Toy Archive.
And that does it for this episode of Transformers University. Thank you for joining me on this return to the Marvel US run. We're just getting started in 1987, so next time on the show, we're going to head across the Atlantic to the UK and talk about the beginning of the UK run in 1987. We'll be covering issues 96 to 104 of the Marvel UK run, so stuff that takes place technically before the stories we're covering here in this episode. So please join me for episode 94 of Transformers University. I am your host, Anthony Brucali, owner-operator, madman behind TFU.info. Till next time, see ya.